Hello, kiddies. Today we travel back in time to the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s and visit a battleship, the pinnacle of the pre-dreadnoughts, the Japanese battleship Mikasa. The Mikasa was the pinnacle of pre-dreadnought battlewagons. Imperial Japanese Navy had ordered 6 modern battleships and to be built by English shipyards, where Mikasa being the last, she wasn't like other battlewagons. She had no sister ship. She was a one-off, a kind of her own. She was protected by the latest Krupp cemented steel, and she was laid down by Vickers in Barrow-in-Furness, England, and she was quickly launched in November of 1900, being commissioned March 1st, 1902. And as with many Japanese ships, she was named for a Mount Mikasa. Mikasa meaning 3 bamboo hats, a name associated with strength and resiliency, both which Battleship Mikasa had plenty of. Her characteristics were as follows. She displaced 15,380 tons at normal load. She had a length of 432 feet. She was 76 feet at the beam, had a 27-foot draught. She was powered by 25 Belleville boilers, producing 15,000 horsepower to 2 shafts and 2 vertical triple expansion steam engines. Her top speed was 18 knots, and she had a range of 7,000 to 9,000 nautical miles with a crew of 836. Her armament, which made her one of the most powerful in the world at the time, were 2 twin 12-inch guns in what would be known as turrets, one forward, one aft superstructure. These were twin guns rotating on barbettes, the precursor of the true turret system. She had 14 single 6-inch guns in casemates. She had 20 single 12-pounders, 6 single 3-pounders, 6 single 2.5-pounders, and 4 18-inch submerged torpedo tubes. Her armor was Krupp cemented armor, cemented steel, had 4 to 9-inch belt armor, 2 to 3-inch deck armor, 8 to 10-inch armor at the turrets or barbettes, 8 to 14 inches also at the barbettes, and 4 to 14 inches of conning tower armor and 2 to 6 inches at the casemates. As far as her main armament and secondary armament goes, Mikasa could deliver a broadside of 4 12-inch main guns and 7 6-inch secondaries, a considerable amount of firepower at any time. And at completion, she was the most powerful pre-dreadnought battlewagon in the world. Upon arrival in Japan, she eventually became Admiral Togo Hiroshiro's flagship and remained his flagship throughout the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905, participating in 3 major engagements. Mikasa was basically Japan's tip of the spear, so to speak. The pinnacle of Japanese modernization program, lessons learned during the First Sino-Japanese War of 1894-1895, where Japan's Matsushima-class cruisers showed their weaknesses due to following Jeune École, which means young school in French, a French naval philosophy the Japanese were following, which advocated using small, heavily armed warships to combat larger battleships and using commerce raiders to cripple your enemy's trade. A French concept that was developed to contend with the might of the British Royal Navy. The Mikasa was actually a modified formidable class battleship, and she boasted the latest in rangefinders, 4 Barrow-Stroud FA-3 coincidence rangefinders, and also having 24 power magnification telescopic gun sights. When the Russo-Japanese War started, the Mikasa was assigned to the 1st Division of the 1st Fleet. In February 1904, she saw her first action at the Battle of Port Arthur, where Admiral Togo Hiroshiro led an attack against the Russian Pacific Squadron, an attack which saw Togo have to retreat, though he would live to fight another day, as would Mikasa. Then on April 13th, Admiral Togo used his 1st Division to lure out some of the Pacific Russian Squadron, including battleship Petropavlovsk under Vice Admiral Stepan Makarov, which was his flagship. Upon realizing he had been lured out by Togo's main body, Makarov turned back only to strike a mine, which sunk his flagship and killed Makarov, a devastating loss to the Russian fleet. Then, August 10th, at the Battle of the Yellow Sea, Mikasa was the primary target of the Russian Navy, the Mikasa having suffered more than 20 hits, losing 125 of her crew, but she still survived to keep up the fight another day. And that other day started on May 27th, 1905 at the Battle of Tsushima. Before we talk about the Battle of Tsushima, we will a little background on Admiral Togo Hiroshiro. Togo Hiroshiro was born into a samurai family, and he even fought in a Japanese war as a samurai. And though he was from a low samurai family, he gained his rank through perseverance and ability in the newly formed Imperial Japanese Naval Academy, proving his worth time and time again. At the Battle of Tsushima, Mikasa led the first fleet against the Russian 2nd and 3rd Pacific Squadrons of the Baltic Fleet, which had basically circumvented half the world to get there through the Indian Ocean around Africa. In this engagement, Mikasa fired 124 12-inch shells, causing massive damage to the Russian fleet. But the Mikasa wasn't unscathed. She suffered more than 40 hits and 113 casualties of the Japanese total, 117 dead and 583 wounded in the engagement. At 1349, the Battle of Tsushima began. At its outset, it seemed Admiral Togo would deploy in an effort to effectively cross the T, but his attack plan was based on Japanese tactic employed by Yasugi Kenshin in medieval Japanese times, known as a Kurima Gakari, or winding wheel, where formations would attack in a circular rotating motion, where fresh combatants would replace weary ones, keeping up the momentum of attack and wearing down the enemy. Admiral Togo would deploy this tactic, then follow alongside with his faster ships, overtake the Russian fleet, and repeat to devastating effect, punishing the Russian fleet continuously. Though this tactic was highly debated as being used by Kenshin in medieval Japanese times, Admiral Togo adapted it to devastating effect as a naval strategy at Tsushima. Admiral Togo had taken a chance with this attack, but it played to his advantage. The Japanese were faster and kept paralleling the Russian, continually cutting them off and performing this maneuver. Togo's rotating attack was highly effective. Togo wasn't letting the Russian fleet leave the battlefield. He kept up the pressure, destroying the bulk of the Russian fleet and eventually forcing the Russians to surrender. The Russian fleet was decimated. 19 ships were sunk with more captured. Only a few made an escape. This battle brought Russia to the negotiating table. Japanese had won the Russo-Japanese War, and this would make them basically a naval superpower, which would eventually have them pursue more gains leading up to the attack of Pearl Harbor in the waning moments of Japan versus the U.S. in World War II. After the Russo-Japanese War, ironically, the Mikasa was moored up at Sasebo and suffered a magazine explosion on the night of September 11th, 1905, killing 251 crewmen and sinking her at her moorings. Almost a year later, on August 7th, 1906, she was refloated, repaired, and reconstructed at Sasebo Naval Arsenal. August 1908, she was back in service, and she nearly missed having another one of her magazines explode in 1912 when a suicidal sailor tried to blow her to hell. World War I saw her being used as a coastal defense boat, then being assigned to the 2nd and 5th Squadrons, participating in the Japanese formations, watching the Russian Civil War in Siberia in 1921. Then, September 1st, 1921, when she was reclassed as a first-class coastal defense ship. Following the Washington Naval Treaty, she was decommissioned September 23rd, 1923, and became a memorial ship on November 12th, 1926. During World War II, she suffered a lot of damage, and the occupiers of Japan after World War II saw American troops remove her superstructure, adding her Kwanzaa hut, and the Mikasa became an aquarium and a nightclub called Club Mikasa for American servicemen. The Mikasa luckily then saw some significant repairs, and in 1961, the restored battleship reopened, and Mikasa is the only surviving pre-dreadnought class battle wagon left in the world, the last vestige of the beginning of the end of the BigGun battle wagon. After her, the world saw the birth of HMS Dreadnought, which sparked an arms race the world over by the world powers to produce the biggest, baddest BigGun battle wagon, leading to super dreadnoughts like USS Texas and super battle cruisers like HMS Hood. Also to behemoths like Germany's Bismarck and Tirpitz and Japan's Yamato and Musashi, as well as U.S. and her fast battleships, the USS North Carolina, Washington, South Dakota, Indiana, Massachusetts, USS Alabama, Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, and Wisconsin. But eventually, even all these battleships or battlewagons were found wanting, overshadowed, and made obsolete by the naval mastery of the air due to the presence of aircraft carriers, the true masters of the seven seas, by which were mastered first by the Japanese and the U.S. naval combatants of World War II. No matter how big your big gun battle wagon was, it could not withstand repeated assaults from the air due to bombers, torpedo bombers, fighter aircraft, wave after wave of these aircraft descending upon the battle wagon like a tempest or a tsunami or even a typhoon or hurricane. These waves would eventually send that battle wagon down to see Davy Jones' locker, to see old Hob. But back to the Mikasa. She is now a museum ship at Mikasa Park at Yokosuka. She is the last surviving pre-dreadnought and the last non-American built battleship in the world. And ironically, it's the last example of a British built battleship in the world. That's crazy to think she's the last true British built, non-American built pre-dreadnought and battleship in the world. Whenever she goes, there will be no more representations of an era of warfare that significantly affected the world during the world's two biggest conflicts, World War I and World War II. I'm Big Duke 6 for CoolKegs Studios, and this episode is part of my greatest Big Gun Battle Wagon series. Please subscribe, like, hell, hit the noted bell, even comment. And please, friends, remember, Civis Pacem Parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war.